Well, the broadcaster Sky and 21st Century Fox have reached agreement on the terms of a takeover deal. Rupert Murdoch's 21st Century Fox will pay £11.7 billion for the 61% stake that it doesn't already own. And the deal comes amid concerns that Rupert Murdoch, who also owns The Sun and the Times newspapers, will have excessive influence over the media in Britain. Karen Bradley, the Culture Secretary, will have 10 days to decide whether the bid raises public interest concerns, and she does have the power to ask Ofcom, the media watchdog, to examine the deal. So with that in mind, let's go to someone who's been involved in ministerial decisions in this area in the past. It is Sir Vince Cable, the former Lib Dem Business Secretary, who joins us from Twickenham. Sir Vince, thanks for joining us. You had to make a decision 5 years ago when you were in government. If you were in government today, what would you be doing?
Well, I think Karen Bradley probably will and certainly should refer this to Ofcom and also potentially the wider competition authorities too. But I think calling this in, I mean, it's the right thing to do because the questions about so-called media plurality apply as they did 6 years ago. But I think from her point of view, I think the government will need to be seen to be independent of influence from the Murdoch Group, and this would be one way of demonstrating it.
There is talk in some quarters, Sir Vince, that things have changed in the last 5 years, actually, and that the concerns about plurality are not as acute as they were then, that the market has changed. What is your response to that kind of reasoning?
Well, sure, the market has changed, and Ofcom last year produced a set of guidance as to whether we have a plurality problem or not, and it's a very good idea, I think, just to test that out. I mean, in some ways, of course, you've got new types of media coming in, but if we're talking specifically about plurality around news and kind of political independence, which is what plurality is about, we still have very, very concentrated ownership, and it's actually become even more concentrated if you look at what's happened to local newspapers and the provision of local news. So the plurality issues which concern me and indeed concern the independent regulator 6 years are still with us, and it seems to me in everybody's interest that we look at this properly. There's an independent analysis, and if the takeover then proceeds, well, it's been done properly.
Again, in some quarters, not least in Parliament, people make the point that the relationship between some media proprietors and some politicians is close, and for that reason they seem to question whether this kind of process can be robust enough. What is your thought on that?
Well, I don't think anybody has questioned the competence or independence of Ofcom, which is the body that's immediately concerned, or if it became a full competition inquiry, the Competition Markets Authority. These are independent, technically competent bodies, and I would have confidence in them. I think the wider issue which you raise is the fact that 3-4 years after the Leveson inquiry reported to set up an independent system of self-regulation, the power of the media proprietors has been such that we haven't got a system which is acceptable. So all of the problems arising from the hacking inquiry are still unresolved. I mean, that's not directly related to this takeover, but it does indicate that powerful media proprietors still set the agenda.
And should the second part, if you like, or the unfinished bit of Leveson be allowed to take place before this decision is taken? Because that's also one suggestion that's been made.
Well, the second part of Leveson should happen. There are very powerful reasons for it to do so, quite apart from this takeover. I mean, where it does indirectly relate is there's a separate issue apart from plurality, the issue about whether James Murdoch in particular is a fit and proper person, and of course that's linked to the Leveson inquiry. But my emphasis from the outset when I was in government was ensuring that we have proper diversity, we have proper plurality, we don't have excessive domination within the media. And so the plurality issue is the one I'm concerned with, and I think that's the issue that the minister's now got to respond to.
Sir Vince Cable, good of you to join us, and thanks very much for talking to us about this issue today. Sir Vince Cable there, the former Lib Dem Business Secretary.